it feels like we're almost going into Anthony Richardson's rookie season. I think he started 5 games last year and didn't complete 4 of them, and then the shoulder injury obviously ended his campaign. That being said, he is going as a top 6 quarterback right now for fantasy football and underdog fantasy best ball drafts. Based on what you know and what you saw last year, do you think that's fair, or do you think that's a little aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to put durability and availability to the side, I think it's fair. Again, you have to factor that in. I think when you're, drafting, anybody, particularly a quarterback, and that would be the one worry that I would have. But certainly if you look at it last year, it's not even like he really tapped into a ton of the explosive playmaking that you feel like's there. The Colts were right up there, the top of the league in plays over 30 yards last year. None of them were a Richardson run. Only a handful of them were, Richardson passes. Certainly Gardner Minshew, delivered on a lot. And to me, that just tells you that Shane Steichen knows what he's doing. So I think that pairing, Steichen, he was only with Jonathan Taylor for 2 snaps last year. That's Anthony Richardson was. So I think when you factor a lot of that in, certainly there's play there for explosive playmaking at that position. And he can provide that. But again, it's just a big question of the availability and the durability over the course of 17 games.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Anthony Richardson flashed some serious potential as a rookie, but we really didn't see a whole lot of him. Should he be getting drafted among the top 6 quarterbacks in fantasy football? Does rookie wide receiver Adonai Mitchell immediately step into a starting role for the Colts? And is there a chance Jonathan Taylor has more carries than any back in the NFL this year? Longtime Colts reporter Kevin Bowen gives you all the information you need to prepare for training camp. My name is Joe Dolan. Like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the FantasyPoints YouTube channel for 32 breakdowns of 32 NFL teams. This is Franchise Focus, Indianapolis Colts. Kevin, obviously, it feels like we're almost going into Anthony Richardson's rookie season. I think he started 5 games last year and didn't complete 4 of them, and then the shoulder injury obviously ended his campaign. That being said, he is going as a top 6 quarterback right now for fantasy football and underdog fantasy best ball drafts. Based on what you know and what you saw last year, do you think that's fair, or do you think that's a little aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to put durability and availability to the side, I think it's fair. Again, you have to factor that in. I think when you're, drafting, anybody, particularly a quarterback, and that would be the one worry that I would have. But certainly if you look at it last year, it's not even like he really tapped into a ton of the explosive playmaking that you feel like's there. The Colts were right up there, the top of the league in plays over 30 yards last year. None of them were a Richardson run. Only a handful of them were, Richardson passes. Certainly Gardner Minshew, delivered on a lot. And to me, that just tells you that Shane Steichen knows what he's doing. So I think that pairing, Steichen, he was only with Jonathan Taylor for 2 snaps last year. That's Anthony Richardson was.
Wow.
So I think when you factor a lot of that in, certainly there's play there for explosive playmaking at that position. And he can provide that. But again, it's just a big question of the availability and the durability over the course of 17 games.
So let's go to Jonathan Taylor. What has Jonathan Taylor said this offseason, if he's discussed it at all, about the fact that he really hasn't played with Anthony Richardson? And how do you think those two will gel in the backfield in Shane Steichen's offense?
Yeah, I always point people back to a week 6 run by Zach Moss last year to tell you what Jonathan Taylor is going to look like with Anthony Richardson. It was a short yardage situation against the Titans, and Tennessee bit hard on the Richardson fake. And boom, Zach Moss, a guy you wouldn't consider a home run hitter at all, he hits the second level and he's gone for about a 50, 60-yard touchdown. And, we know Taylor has that on his resume. He has it with far less quarterbacks you need to respect, leg or arm-wise, in his career. And certainly Richardson, you have to respect in both of those areas. So I think that dynamic is going to be right up there with any in the league. I know Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, probably Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, but I think from a pure running explosive standpoint, that duo of Richardson and Taylor will be right up there with any. And again, I thought, Taylor really ended the season on an extremely high note. He didn't participate at all in the offseason. You had all the contract drama, all of that. That to me is something that, you can't forget. But again, week 18, he was just absolutely outstanding in that winning get in game against the Texans. Really a huge reason why the Colts stayed in that game for as long as they did. So yeah, I would expect a pretty healthy year.
So in 2022, Jonathan Taylor played in, I believe, 11 games. He was over 70% of the snaps in 8 of those 11 games. Last season, he plays in 10 games. He's over 70% of the snaps in just 3 of those 10 games. But you mentioned Zach Moss. Zach Moss is not in Indianapolis anymore. And you look at the depth chart behind Jonathan Taylor, it includes guys like Trey Sermon, who's I mean, bounced from team to team to team to team. And then Evan Hull, who was their 5th round pick last year. Tyler Goodson's there. To me, just as an outside observer, this really doesn't look like a backfield where it looks like an even split is coming. To me, this looks like Jonathan Taylor is primed to be a true bell cow in 2024.
Well, frankly, I think you're paying him to be that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, this past year, this time last year, that conversation was very much up in the air. So you need him to be the bell cow, and I think you can make the argument he might be as much of a bell cow as anybody in the NFL in today's climate. So maybe first and second down, Trey Sermon gets a little bit of a breath of a fresh air, I guess here, maybe in the first half, maybe again in the second half, but outside of that, I don't think too much. I mean, is there a third down back? Maybe Evan Hull, the 5th round pick out of Northwestern from a couple of years ago. Maybe it's Tyler Goodson, and he's a guy that kind of played a little bit of that role late last year. But yeah, I mean, Taylor should get the heavy workload in that backfield.
I'm not 100% certain it even matters for fantasy football, but Taylor has had some injuries in his career. If you had to bet on one of these guys being above the others behind Taylor in snaps, who would your bet be on?
Yeah, probably Sermon as your traditional first and second down guy. Now, when you get into third down, you get into a little bit more passing centric. Maybe that's where I'd lean Hall or Goodson. But if someone's going to kind of replicate what Zach Moss was when Taylor was, with him last year, I would bet on Sermon.
So the Colts made an investment, obviously, in the wide receiver position this offseason, signing Michael Pittman and then drafting Adonai Mitchell in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. Michael Pittman, of course, was a 2nd round pick himself. Do they view Michael Pittman as kind of that alpha X receiver? And how do you believe Adonai Mitchell fits into this dynamic here?
Yeah, I do think that's how they kind of view Pittman. To me, this is kind of how I've looked at the Colts wideout core. Pittman and Josh Downs, I consider them kind of single and double hitters. 6 catches for 74 yards in the box score, whatever, 8 for 80, something like that. And then with Pierce and Mitchell, when they're playing, I do think there's a little bit more of a home run ability. Certainly Pierce's early career, he's not played with, big arm quarterbacks at all. You would think Richardson would help accentuate that strength. And then Mitchell, I thought he had a really nice spring. I thought he flashed, certainly plenty of big game potential he showed in college. He's a guy that the staff talks very uniquely about when comparing him to other wideouts on the roster. So I do think there's an ability there for a rookie as, the 11th wideout taken in this year's draft to be kind of an early impact guy. So, again, Pittman and Downs will be, I think, the heavy catch guys. But if you're looking for bigger play potential, I do think some of that will come from Mitchell, and we'll see how him and Pierce in that battle plays out.
Yeah, Josh Downs played in 17 games last year, but he had some injury problems, maybe just a little bit of a durability. He's a smaller guy. And there was a stretch in the middle of the season when he really started to produce, actually starting in week 3, 8 catches. Then he had a game with 6, then 5, then 5, then 7. And things kind of slowed down for him at the end of the year, even though he played in every game. What was kind of going on there? Did he hit a rookie wall? And what is his approach to the offseason bit?
Yeah, he had a knee injury probably just right around Halloween, maybe a little bit after that. I think in that game against New England and Frankfurt, Germany, I want to say he was like only used on third downs, maybe. So I think that hindered him a little bit there. But I mean, still, for a 3rd round pick to produce those numbers, that's nothing to sneeze at. Again, he is that consistent slot option. And maybe it might feel a little death by 1,000 paper cuts and kind of, again, being that single double hitter for you. But very trustworthy. Again, this spring, without Pittman, he was banged up a little bit, and Pierce was as well. A lot of targets going Josh Downs' way. So I expect him to, be a very consistent, option for this team.
Is there a battle brewing between Adonai Mitchell, AD Mitchell as he goes by, and Alec Pierce? Or is that something that Shane Steichen will defer to the veteran in Pierce, and Mitchell's going to have to come kind of earn that outside receiver role?
Well, I think Mitchell's got a legit chance to earn it, and I don't think they're going to be too stubborn about, whatever. Oh, he's a rookie; he's got to earn his stripes. If the guy can play make, you put him in there, and certainly Pierce has done something to earn the coaching trust. It's wild to think. I believe the stat is right. No receiver played more snaps in the NFL last year than Alec Pierce,
Wow.
which I think is just kind of astonishing when you put it in that light. And he had 30 some catches. So again,
A lot
he's
of
got
wind
a quarter.
sprints. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a quarterback that should help him out down the field, much more so than the ones he's played with. But they have spoken very highly about AD Mitchell, and the actions have been there as well. We were out there for a handful of spring viewings, and I would say pretty close to all of them. Consistently, he was making a play or two that really stood out. So, yeah, I think there's reason for optimism on that front as well.
You mentioned that Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman really had never played with big arm quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson, and quite frankly, they still really haven't because Richardson spent so much time injured last year. Gardner Minshew did an admirable job for the Colts, no doubt about it, but he doesn't have the arm that Joe Flacco has. And how much was Joe Flacco, at least stylistically as a thrower, how much was that prioritized for the Colts in looking for a backup quarterback this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think at the end of the day, they didn't care so much about dual threat nature, matching up Richardson's play style. It was more of just, okay, who can win? And Flacco obviously proved last year he can do that. And then the bonus is, yeah, stylistically, from a passing standpoint, there should be little to no drop off. I mean, it was kind of funny watching Flacco this spring. I was like, damn, I'm not used to the number two
Yeah.
quarterback rifling the ball into windows that, quarterbacks A, don't even attempt, and B, actually get the ball into that window. And I know Flacco certainly hasn't been perfect by any means, but still, I do think that was a part in it. And, obviously you can't totally ignore the Richardson injury, elephant question that is in the room. So, yes, certainly Flacco, the big armed ability, having that chance to throw the ball down the field, that is all very much there.
I need you, Kevin, to help me suss out this tight end room because the Colts have spent 4 draft picks. They have guys who have shown receiving ability. Kylan Granson, Jelani Woods, obviously Mo Alley Cox has been a red zone star in his career. Are we looking at tight end by committee here, or is there somebody that the Colts would really want to win the job as kind of their number one, and from a fantasy perspective, number one receiving tight end in this group?
Yeah, well, first off, I guess to solve it, I would say just pick your coin that's closest to you right now and flip it one week and flip it the next week and flip it the week after that, and that'll decide what your tight end depth chart is. I mean, I will steer Colts fans away from a tight end every single week because obviously I get a popular question about, hey, who do you think the tight end is going to be this week? And I mean, sure, it's not like they're going to ignore the tight end, but I mean, just look at the numbers from last year. I mean, it was crazy how balanced the depth chart was, and I don't think that's going to change. Honestly, with Jelani Woods, I think it's just going to continue to kind of dilute exactly having that true number one. And maybe Woods grows into that in an ideal world. I mean, he was the 3rd round pick and he was the, crazy testing big tight end. And, he's the one that, a lot of people were intrigued by late in his rookie year. And then he misses all last season with hamstring injury. So, he would be the one. And sure, in a perfect world, you would have somebody emerge, but I'm not holding my breath for it.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold you to this, Kevin. I'm not going to hold this against you, and we're not going to persecute you if you get this wrong. But I do have to ask, if you were a betting man, which of those tight ends would you bet on leading this team in catches of the room?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would bet on Woods just because, again, there is I think the most intrigue with him considering he missed all of last season. But still, I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I don't, I mean, you can hear the hesitation in my voice. I don't say that with, tons and tons of conviction, clearly.
One more before we let you go. The offensive line is something that the Colts, I guess you can play the blame game and say the lack of success of the offensive line is why Andrew Luck ended up having to retire. How do you feel about the state of this line going into the 2024 season? Obviously, a lot of draft picks have been spent there in the last couple of years, though no first round picks on the line.
Yeah, really big bounce back year for the O line. New line coach Tony Sprono Jr. came in and I think helped kind of revive, maybe mentally more than anything, that group because it has been littered with high draft picks. You could probably make the argument that they have some of the highest draft capital investment of any O line in the entire NFL. So they return everybody. I think everybody that played a snap, if I'm not mistaken, is back on their O line. So you don't see that very often. So again, very important year for that group to bounce back. Some injuries for Braden Smith at right tackle. I think he's a really important piece that you don't, commonly hear his name thrown out there. So he's important to, I think, get healthy. He missed the entire spring after knee surgery in the offseason. So again, it's a unit that got back to kind of the back of their baseball card last season after a really disappointing 2022. And I'll be curious to see if they can kind of continue that as, some of those guys start to sniff, the back nine of their careers.
The Colts are one of the most interesting teams in the NFL this season, and certainly this offseason we're going to have some position battles to follow, and certainly the health of Anthony Richardson to follow. And you can follow Kevin Bowen wherever you get your content, and he will give you all the updates from training camp. He is the host of Wake Up Call 107.5. He's covered the Colts since 2011. He's been a recurring guest on Franchise Focus, and you can follow him on Twitter at KBowen1070. Kevin, thanks for joining me for Franchise Focus yet again. We'll catch up with you next year.
Of course, Joe. Always enjoy it. Thanks, man.